What is up, guys? It's your friend, the Lazy Life Guide. Thank you once again for tuning in to listen to this podcast. I really appreciate your company. Today, let's resume our discussion on the methods that can be used to regulate agents. Now, in the previous video, we talked about how the law can set up constraints on agents, and this can be done through rules or standards. Rules are more detailed and they specify conduct in which the agent must do. Standards, on the other hand, are more generalized and more vague in a sense, and allow for more flexibility by legislatures and courts to interpret the action of the agent after the agent has committed that action. So, those are the first two strategies under constraining agents. Now let's take a look at the next category of strategies that can be used to protect principles, and that is the terms of affiliation. So, the law can also regulate how agents affiliate with their principal. Now, the word affiliation, as used in the textbook Anatomy of Corporate Law, requires some explanation. The difference between constraining of agents and affiliation of agents is that the constraints of agents applies during the agency relationship. So yes, I did say that standards are used to evaluate the conduct of the agent after the agent has acted. But the first category assumes that the agency relationship still exists. The affiliation terms, on the other hand, refers to the time before or after the agency relationship is established, whereas rules and standards apply to the agency relationship itself. So, just to recap, the first category, which we discussed in the previous video, applies while the agency relationship is still in effect, whereas the affiliation terms applies before or after the agency relationship is established. Alright, so with that in mind, let's discuss what are the two strategies that the law uses to regulate the terms of affiliation. These can be defined as entry and exit terms. Entry terms is, as the name implies, how agents enter this relationship with their principals. So, the agent must make some disclosure requirements for the sake of transparency, such as whether or not the agent has any conflict of interest, whether or not the agent is going to perform or undertake some action during the course of agency itself, or just where the agent's disposition lies. So in that sense, it protects the principal before the whole agency relationship is constituted. So that refers to the entry terms. The converse of that would be the exit terms. The exit terms, again, regulates how agents affiliate with their principals, but instead of focusing on the agent, the exit terms focus on the principals. So it allows the principal to exit from the agency relationship if their principal feels that the agency relationship is not working out for the principal. In general, in corporate law, there are two such exit terms that are afforded to every principal. The first one would be the right to withdraw one's investment. So in this case, suppose the principal had put in some money into a particular scheme of the agency relationship. The law allows the principal to take out his investment and therefore prevents any losses that were incurred by the agent's misconduct. The second exit opportunity is a bit less in the sense that it doesn't fully protect the principal's money that the principal had put in initially, but it allows the principal to recover some of the losses that would have otherwise been incurred, and it is the right to transfer shares to another person. So in this case, the principal thinks that an agent is going to act in a way that would result in his investment losing out money, and therefore to minimize the losses that are incurred, the principal can decide to sell these shares to another person in the company. So a very good example would be, suppose, let's say, the majority shareholders decides to engage in a transaction that is going to reduce the value of the minority shareholders. So in this case, the majority shareholders are the agents, and they're going to act in an opportunistic manner to disadvantage their principals, which is the minority shareholders. the minority shareholders will have the right to sell off their shares to the market. This is a less than satisfactory solution because when the shareholders decide to sell off their shares to a third party, the third party is not stupid. The third party would likely know that the principal is just trying to sell off the shares in order to avoid incurring losses due to an unfavorable transaction. And if that third party is also going to hold that minority shareholding, then that third party will be the party that is bearing the loss. Therefore, when the third party offers money to the principal in exchange for the shares, the third party will often offer a reduced amount to offset the losses that will be anticipated by that third party. So all in all, there are two strategies to control the terms of affiliation in which principals and agents affiliate. Either there's entry and exit terms. Entry terms focus on how the agent affiliates with the principal in making disclosure requirements, and exit terms focus on how the principal exits from an opportunistic or otherwise undesirable agency relationship, either by withdrawing investment or selling off one's shares. So that is the second class of strategies that the law implements to protect principals: constraining agents and affiliating terms. The third class of categories involves aligning the incentives that agents and principals have with one another. So instead of focusing on how the agent and principals regulate their conduct with one another, the third set of strategies involves governance of the principal and agent relationship with one another. So there's a slight difference there. In the first two, we are regulating how the agent behaves, but in the third set of strategies, what we are doing is that we are simply conditioning the environment in which the agent and principal acts with one another. So the difference, once again, is that in the first two, we are basically having a kind of dictatorship style to say that you need to do this. It's more focused on the conduct per se. Whereas in the third and subsequent strategies, we are focusing on making an environment that will be conducive for the agent to act in a way that is conducive to the principal, and vice versa. So under the third class of strategies, we have the alignment of incentives between the principal and the agent. This can be done either through trusteeship strategies or reward strategies. Let me talk about trusteeship first. As the name implies, trusteeship strategies help to ensure that the agent is able to perform his trusteeship duties well. So how can the agent perform his trusteeship duties well? One of the ways that this can be done is to remove any conflict of interest that may arise from this whole agency relationship. I think the primary conflict of interest that predominates the discussion in corporate law will be that of money. The assumption here, of course, is that money serves as a conflict of interest and that money can incentivize an agent to act in a way that would harm his principal. If this assumption is true, this means that once we remove money from the equation, the agent will no longer be tempted to act in a way that could disadvantage his principal, and that other factors will step in and encourage the agent to act in a way that is proper and fitting to his role. In other words, being a good trustee. I think you can see why this strategy is called trusteeship, and it applies before the agent acts. So what are some examples in which the agent is removed from this temptation of money, and therefore the conflict of interest? Well, there are two examples. The first one would be that of independent directors. So independent directors are independent in that they do not have a vested monetary interest in the performance of the company. And therefore, the reasoning goes, because these independent directors are independent of the financial gains of the company, they will not be tempted by money to act in a way that would be contrary to the company. The second example would be independent auditors. So independent auditors help to audit the company's financial statements and approve critical decisions that are being made by the company itself. The reasoning goes that because these auditors, again, are independent from the financial gains of the company, they will not be tempted to act in a way that will disadvantage the company, whether is it by overlooking some accounting fraud that is occurring or by discounting any accounting mispractices that may have arisen. in the course of evaluating the company's financial statements. So you can see how trusteeship strategies help to align the agent's incentives with the principal by removing any conflicts of interest, which is predominantly money. The last strategy that is used to align the incentives between principal and agents is the reward strategies. So, the reward strategies, unlike the previous trusteeship strategies, focus on what happens after the agent has acted. So, the reward strategy basically rewards the agent for doing well, doing good to his principal. Conversely, if the agent does bad by his principal, then the agent will not receive any reward at the end of the whole transaction. A very common way in which the reward strategies can be done is by having a sharing rule. So in this case, if the principal makes a lot of money in the transaction, then the agent will also receive a lot of money in that transaction. But usually reward strategies are not as lucrative as trusteeship strategies, which act before the agent acts. The problem with reward strategies is that they only come in after the agent acts. So, if an agent is looking forward to these reward strategies, it can possibly inevitably sabotage the principal. For example, if the agent is looking forward to the money that he will receive as a reward under this strategy and finds that the reward is so low, then the agent may act out of spite to say, I'm not going to act in a way that is to your benefit since I'm being paid so little anyways. Conversely, if the agent is receiving too much money, then these monetary rewards can also cloud the agent's judgment and result in him acting in a way that is only focused on that excessive amount of money at the end. So, the reward strategy must be calibrated correctly to ensure that it is not too little, such that the agent acts out of spite, or not too much that the agent is clouded in his judgment. So this is a tricky strategy that requires a bit more effort on the principal's part if he were to implement it. So, we have discussed 3 classes of strategies thus far: constraining of agents, how the terms of affiliation between agents and principals can be done, and how we can align the incentives between agents and principals such that the agent can act in a way that would maximize the principal's welfare. So those are 3 out of the 5 strategies that the law has to protect principals, and in the next video we will talk about the last 2 classes of strategies, which involves the rights of appointment and the rights of decision. Thank you for tuning in today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.